Glad to finally meet you. I'm always really excited to talk to fellow entrepreneurs. And obviously, you've been doing what you're doing for a while now. I'm always fascinated how people end up in the life science and healthcare industry. And I want to show folks that you don't really need to have gone through that path since university to be part of this. And looking at your resume, I noticed that a degree in Duquesne? Did I get that right?
Duquesne.
No.
Duquesne.
Totally butchered it.
Well, a lot of people do say Duquesne like you did, but yeah, it is Duquesne.
Oh yeah. Where is that? Is that in the UK or?
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Pittsburgh. Okay. In computer science, then you did many years in software development. What was that thing that happened in your pathway for you to pivot to healthcare?
It was a number of opportunities. I did start out and had that comp sci degree, and fascinatingly was thinking about getting a PhD in AI in the early 90s. People forget that it was AI way back then. And I got a job offer. So it was like more debt in grad school or go out in the world. So I went out into the world.
Yeah.
Through the 90s, I worked on a lot of different solutions, spaces, mortgages, inventory management, accounting. And they weren't engaging enough. They weren't challenging enough, fascinating. They were very much solved problems. And that's why I got into digital health. And because there's so many new problems, even today, 20 plus years later, there are new problems, new challenges, new opportunities to help people. It's great that you have more products on your shelves or you've paid your mortgage successfully, important things in life. But in digital health, life sciences, like we're helping people live better.
A lot of people forget that AI was talked about a long time ago. It hasn't seen this type of explosion and interest, obviously, since ChatGPT launched, their first version. Why did you start Estenda Solutions? You didn't see anything out there kind of trying to do what you wanted to do, or what's the story behind that?
Yeah, so Estenda is a consulting organization, professional services, software development, data, and AI projects. And it was a series, Estenda was a series of fortuitous events that we had a project to get started. But I wanted to go in the entrepreneurial route because I had been part of many companies and saw the mistakes people made and okay, I think I can do better. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I've definitely made mistakes over the years, but saw the challenges of different processes and systems that were in place at various different organizations that I'd worked with. And it was like, okay, here's my approach to how I do these things. And so to be able to run and manage my own company, I do have a co-founder, Drew Lewis. It was just a fascinating opportunity at that point in time. In the early 2000s too, the software industry was on a little bit of a downturn. So it was, hey, go off and do my
That's
own
a bubble,
thing.
right?
Yeah, that's part
Was
of
that
that. Yeah, part of the
Okay.
internet and post 9/11 bubble and everything like that. Things started going on the downturn, and the company that I was working at went from like the local division went from like 400 to 100 people in a matter of months. It was just, and to be able to go off and be responsible myself for an organization was what really drove that. So,
And so what better idea post bubble to launch a digital consulting firm, which is great. A lot of companies start off in hard times. I think Microsoft started off like during a recession. Now for the new onslaught of AI, right? AI now is probably much different than it was back then. And my question to you is, obviously you probably still have the same goals as you had back then to better humanity, improve health, but your business strategy has got to drastically or profoundly have changed.
yeah, it definitely changed. It won AI capabilities and what's possible today. And I don't think back in the early 90s kind of thing, anything at all like this was imagined, except maybe in science fiction, books kind of thing. And even back then, they didn't get it quite right as to what we're doing and how it's being used. I think a big aspect of it is the creative aspect of it. I think that's probably the biggest unexpected thing of what the AI can do. It's, way back when it was AI is going to do those routine tasks for us. It was more robot sort of oriented kind of, do the dishes for us. Whereas today, it's not doing the dishes just yet. It's writing poems and all sorts of different things and creating images to impact marketing, education.
Yeah.
From our corporate perspective, it is interesting because we do software development and data AI projects. From an AI point of view, what's interesting is a lot of those projects are really data projects. Like, okay, we want to train a system to do X, Y, and Z. You need data to do that. And it really just keeps going back to the core of that. So some things have remained very similar to what we've been doing for a long time now. But then when you do get into these Gen AI systems and even use them internally for software development, it's very experimental in terms of using them for software development. So the capabilities are improving very quickly, but it's still in the hobbyist realm of things that you're creating really from a pure software development system. I have, used some of these systems to create like a time management application and it works. But it's then when I need to go and change something, it's okay, it just broke. I'm like, so I
Right,
can't
right,
really
right.
rely on it for a continual long-term type of system that then I'm going to upgrade over time.
Yeah. Not yet.
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
Not yet.
Especially in terms of like life science or healthcare, a lot of the data is out there, but AI can help process all that data, gather all that data, and come up with some sort of pattern or conclusion, which is far beyond what a couple of humans could do, right? Or a computer at this point.
It's making us more efficient. It's realizing stuff and finding those patterns that you and I can't do. We do a
Hmm.
lot of work in retinal imaging, and there's been some experimental systems that look at retinal images, which is the back of your eye, in the computer systems can determine gender, male, female. And yes, the world's not that dichotomous. It can look at male, female, but you and I can't do that. And the people that are creating these systems and experiment with it, they're not sure what the AI is seeing, but yeah, it can identify reliably, okay, these eyes were male, these eyes were female. So it's those
Wow.
types of things. I saw something today even that they're working on projects to be able to communicate with dolphins. I'm like, you and I can't do that. But the computer having access to a vast repository of data to learn from and understand is powerful.
Now, how much you think of a bottleneck is actually getting the physical servers to manage all that data? I've heard that's like a big thing, hence Trump's, 500 billion investment in AI. And I think a big part of it is like making sure we have the right amount of servers and energy to generate this
Yeah,
analysis.
there's sort of two worlds there. One of which I think of as like the PhD AI. These are the people at OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, who are creating the large language models in these cases. They're the organizations that need this massive data capabilities. For average systems out there, for using these, they are focusing on much smaller volumes, more niche type of applications. And by using those large language models that are massively energy draining, you can create amazing solutions. So I don't need to be a PhD in AI to go off and fine tune a system anymore or generate machine learning algorithms looking at retinal images for diabetic retinopathy or breast cancer. You don't need to be a PhD in those fields to be able to develop and create these systems. And with cloud technology kind of thing, you can have access to the computing power you need.
Interesting. I'll throw a scenario at you and you let me know in terms of like time frame how far we are off at this. But let's just say you're wearing either a shirt or a wearable, right? A watch that's able to analyze the biomarkers that you have in your blood or all type of analysis. And they're pretty much able to order you food based on how your blood is looking like that day or that week. Is that in the future, you think, a scenario like that? And how far off are we from that?
You could probably do that today. Honestly. Like, I
Really?
think, yeah, absolutely. And you're marrying different systems together. So everyone's starting to talk about AI agents and what they're capable of. But you think, and you mentioned ordering food and taking biometric data from what's going on internally in your body. And so diabetes comes to mind. There are continuous glucose meters that some of them are reading data in understanding what's going on internally as much as a minute a day, 5 minutes at an increment. So very fine-grained, fine-tuned information as we gain that better understanding then of, hey, are you exercising through looking at your heart rate, looking at your blood pressure, and then easily having links and access to DoorDash, and agent can go and place an order on DoorDash. You can do that today. Is it a viable business model? That's a different story. But yeah, you could implement that. What's fascinating about that in that specific example, because we have been around for a while now, I was part of what was called Project Health Design back in 2008 through 2011, 12, probably that time frame. Got a bunch of academic medical institutions together, industry together. And at that time, it was when here in the US, electronic medical records became mandated and they were really starting to roll out in the industry. And the idea of a personal health record was new at the time. It was like, as an individual, as a patient, I didn't really have access to my medical information, but now you could. And biometric devices were getting better and improving kind of thing. So the point of Project Health Design was to really envision what could you do with this technology to improve the lives of people. And that was your example was one of those things. It's like you're driving down the road and your blood glucose is starting to go low. And if it goes too low, you can potentially pass out. And if you're driving, that's obviously a bad thing. So we can detect that and understand that, and you could flash a message on the car dashboard, and then you have GPS and understand where the local restaurants are. And it's like, okay, you should pull over ahead. There's a 7-Eleven, a Wawa, which is one of our local convenience stores,
Okay.
and get something to eat. But then it could even direct you towards, well, here's a McDonald's or a healthy food store. You should probably go to the healthy food store, better option kind of thing to really help drive that behavior change. So we were thinking about those things back then, and now, yeah, you could do it.
You're in the thick of it. So you mentioned any really neat things in terms of health improvement, life expectancy extension, or whatever that you see coming down the pipeline?
There's just so much going on. How much time do you have
Yeah.
is the core. I think
that you think is fascinating.
Yeah, where it's going to make an interesting impact. Society as a whole globally we're getting older kind of thing. And particularly here in the US, it's like when that happens, you're going to take that older person out of their home where they've been living comfortably and put them in some sort of assisted living. They don't want that to happen. Loved ones, they don't want to have to move, their mother, their father into that type of scenario. But unfortunately, sometimes that's the best option. In last summer, I had my in-laws passed away, and unfortunately from some health complications. And you just go to think thank you. And you think, oh, how can we apply these technologies to help people living in the home? And there are companies that are doing this, and it's getting better and better. And it's not invasive. It becomes invisible to the person living there. But considering a scenario, my mother who's getting older, I live 2 hours away from her, so it's hard to check in day to day. Yes, I can call her, but if there's like an underbed sensor, okay, my mother got up this morning. She used the restroom. She opened the refrigerator, closed the refrigerator, turned on the coffee pot, opened and closed the cabinets. That's her normal pattern of behavior each morning. And you're going to use AI to analyze that data and understand that normal pattern of behavior. Okay, tomorrow she doesn't get up. She doesn't turn the coffee pot on. It's okay, ding, call, the next door neighbor. Can you go check in on my mother or place a phone call to check in and see what's going on? And maybe she's just a little extra tired and didn't get out of bed. But it's having that level of knowledge without being invasive, without having to go to an assisted care facility. As a concerned son, I don't have to worry as much anymore. So that technology is slowly rolling out, and it's going to empower us all to live better, healthier lives in a comfortable environment, which is fascinating.
That's really, really fascinating. I'm at that stage too with my parents are getting older, and that is definitely on my mind. Definitely less creepy than having a video surveillance camera.
Yes.
You can check anytime on your phone. So yeah. I get it. I read that if we can hang on, and you can probably confirm this, but if we can hang on for the next 10 years, AI will figure it out. And in terms of medicine and health wise, we'll end up living well beyond 100 years old. Just give AI time to find the cures, to discover new drugs faster, and then we'll get there. What do you think?
It's making a difference today. So I think of rare diseases. There are tons of people that have these rare diseases, and a rare disease is just simply classified as not a lot of people have this. And what happens then is the pharmaceutical companies, like science companies, they don't have the financial incentive to spend the millions, if not billions of dollars to generate a drug because the market's not there. But what about off-label uses? And so there are systems out there in place that they have trained specifically to target for this. This is not like your ChatGPT, but they've trained specific AI systems to be able to look at the breadth and depth of research out there and apply it to rare diseases to be able to find these off-label uses. It might be like one research report that somebody did in an obscure university. You or I are never coming across this in our day-to-day life, but the AI can be aware of this. So it's that I'm looking forward to this. It's that marriage of these different technologies, just like aging in home is matching up this remote monitoring capabilities and understanding patterns of behavior. Same thing in healthcare is going to happen. So one of the biggest use cases for these Gen AI systems now is ambient listening. And it's being rolled out aggressively now. So the doctor, your health, your nurse doesn't have to necessarily take the notes. They don't have to stare at a computer screen and take notes. Let the ambient listening capabilities understand what's happening in that room. Now, marry that together with a knowledge of all of the research that exists that is coming out, new research coming out every day. You and I cannot keep up with that. It's not physically possible. The computers, the technology can. And it can today, I think of it as surfacing questions and interesting thoughts to the healthcare practitioner that can then make an informed decision of, okay, yes, this makes sense. Let me engage the patient and explore this possibility with the patient. Because you and I don't have that capacity, but the computers and technology do to help improve
Mhm.
life.
How much do you think the privacy is an issue in North America around that stuff? Because I know in North America, we're more sensitive to that stuff than other parts of the world. Like in Asia, I think they've just accepted the fact that, the government knows everything about them and they're cool with it. But us, it still seems a struggle. To get to the point that you just mentioned, essentially, you need to kind of give up your privacy and trust a server to keep it safe.
Yes, we have the laws in place. HIPAA is in place today. HIPAA guides and protects our data in a healthcare setting. That also applies to these AI types of systems. From a contractual perspective, when I engage with a customer and we are working with a health system and we're dealing with medical data, we're also bound by HIPAA, and we signed what are called business associate agreements that, pass that responsibility to us as well. That we are part of that healthcare picture. The large language models that the OpenAIs and these companies, they will sign these agreements with you to protect that data. So yes, the laws are in place. But
Okay.
what's interesting about that, I don't worry about, and this is my personal opinion, I don't worry too much about that in particular because of what it's going to enable and what the benefits that I can gain from that. And I think in healthcare life sciences, we do have to learn from the world of marketing. So if you walk into a supermarket, there has been so much research and data analysis about behaviors of when you walk into the store, you're more likely to turn left than right. You're more likely to buy a product that is at eye height and not
Mhm.
above or below closer to the floor.
Yeah.
They've figured this stuff out. And yes, there are challenges in that level of influence over your shopping behaviors, but it also makes my life better. Yes, I get a lot of ads in the social media platforms and all sorts of other places, but those ads are targeted to me. Like they're targeted to me because I've expressed an interest in them. Is it perfect? No. Is healthcare a level above that we have to protect that data? Yes, absolutely. It's not the same level as marketing, but the laws are in place. We're continuing adapting as an industry to what is possible to improve everybody.
I've heard this said before where AI is moving so fast at such a quick pace that the laws haven't really caught up. I think the same pattern happened with social media, right? When Facebook launched and the laws didn't really catch up to protect, either children or whatnot. Did we learn from social media?
I'd love to say we learned from social media, but as a culture, as a society, we probably haven't learned
Yeah.
enough. The,
Yeah.
the challenge is, I think, twofold. One, it is game changing. I think of it as the printing press, electricity,
Mm.
computers, internet, social media, smartphones. But I start that list on purpose back on like the printing press because the jump from like printing press to electricity, probably a couple hundred years there. When the printing press came out and books became more ubiquitous and more people had access and started learning to read, there was fear at that time of this is going to destroy humanity. We're never going to have to remember anything again because it's just going to be in a book. Obviously, that
Yeah.
didn't prove to be true. Saw the same thing with telephones. It's, oh, where society is going downhill. We don't have to talk face to face with anybody. AI is potentially even more game changing to society than any of those technologies, and it's happening faster and faster. From the internet to mobile phone to social media to now AI. Look at what's changed in just generative AI capabilities in the last 2 years. It's mind blowing. So, yes, the legal frameworks are challenged. I like what the EU is doing. It's very risk based. So, if it's a low risk thing, there's less regulation. But if it's high risk, then we need more guidance and regulations around it. But
Mm.
yes, it is hard for governments and entities to keep up. On the flip side of that, I'm also intrigued by the idea of a lot of AI projects nowadays, particularly in healthcare, talk about ethics. And oh, we need an ethical statement. How are we going to use this? I struggle with that because we have the ethics. I'm like, do I really need another ethics statement? It's like we have the ethics. They're in place. Medicine talks about first do no harm. Okay, let's apply that. And that's a good starting point. So yeah, it's yes, there is a need for balance between these things. And if we just solely rely on the goodness of humanity, we know that doesn't always work out.
I agree. That was actually going to be my next question is, do you have a moral or ethical line in regards to healthcare and AI that you will not cross? For example, Colossal recently just brought the direwolf back. Not sure if AI was involved with that, but I'm pretty sure AI is going to be involved with like future projects that they want to bring the mammoth back and the saber-toothed tiger back. What are your thoughts around that? Now it's animals, but who knows? In the future, it'd be just bringing your sister back or your grandmother back, or
Yeah, that'd be interesting. And I think, or trying to do that kind of thing, retaining memories kind of thing, so you can continually talk to your grandmother over time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yes, there are boundaries there, particularly interesting areas, mental health and suicide ideation, prevention. There have been a couple high profile examples where a chat system didn't say commit suicide, but didn't respond appropriately. But in some of those examples, one, it's high profile, so it's a small number of those types of examples. But that's not what that system was intended for. So you do have to take that with, I think, as a grain of salt. But yeah, I'm not going to create a random ChatGPT system to help people with suicidal ideation. That's just blankly irresponsible to do these days. But there are systems and people that are creating them to help specifically in mental health, and they're testing them and they're putting through rigorous clinical trials and quality validation to be able to help those people because there are not enough mental health professionals to take care of the people that need the assistance. People don't scale.
Gotcha.
AI technology scales. So you have to think of these responsibly and how you use them where they're appropriate. In healthcare, you're not letting an AI make a blanket healthcare decision about your life, your care, your treatment. you need that person involved, that known healthcare professional involved, like they're training their expertise to make the informed decisions. 100% today, there is this idea of hallucinations of the system making up something. But at some point also, it's going to be irresponsible to not use AI in care and treatment. Again, going back to what I was saying, it's like the AI is just aware of vast amounts of more research than you are and can see those patterns and trends. So use it as a second opinion or help accelerate, a diagnosis. I know various people who have lupus, which is very hard to diagnose. And if you're a rural practitioner that just don't have access to the technology, it's not something you see every day. When we talk about rare diseases earlier too, you don't see it, you're not necessarily going to think of this rare disease. The AI can put together this pattern of information and be like, hey, doctor, maybe think about this. And that's a hugely powerful capability that you can use today.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing. So we've been talking about how AI could help accelerate many things to better human health. In the next couple of years, RJ, in your space, what would you say would be one of the main challenges in the digital health solution space?
It's not a technology problem, I think, is the main challenge. The main challenge is around education, building trust, having those professionals being aware of what this technology is capable of and implementing it within the workflow. That's a lot of challenges as we talk to startups too. It's, oh, we have this great solution. Well, if it's not part of the workflow, nobody's going to adapt it or adopt it. A physician now has to see 15, 20 patients a day and that kind of thing. You're massively overwhelmed. They're not going to be like, oh, let me take on this new technology and try it. There are individuals that are doing that, and we're working with a bunch of them on different projects, but that day to day is really hard. You're not going to get that mass adoption if you're not part of the workflow. So I think those challenges are not really technical. It's people and process are the major challenges in the industry. And even here in the US, or reimbursement, how are you going to get reimbursed for the use of the system?
We're all humans. Resistant to change is a thing. But just like any new technology, there's a curve, early adopters, and then at some point it just takes off. I think with AI, I think that curve is more exponential than anything else we've ever seen. I could talk for hours about this stuff. RJ, but tell me about Estenda Solutions and what's the latest and greatest thing in what you're doing and how people can reach you.
Yeah, Estenda, as I mentioned, is a company I co-founded. Digital health software development, AI focus exclusively. We are ISO 13485 certified, which qualifies us for medical software development. So always looking for the next opportunity. Estenda.com is a good place to start, or LinkedIn, my LinkedIn. Always putting out there good, what I think is interesting content, trying to spur the next innovation. We really work on the R&D side of things. A lot of our projects have an MD and a PhD involved, trying to create those cutting edge solutions to better understand how do we improve patient health and wellness. It might be a clinician using it, a nurse using it, healthcare practitioner, or patient directly, or even we've helped medical device companies better understand how their device was being used and how to visualize the data. But it's always in that focus of how are we improving the life of others, which makes it day-to-day fun, and it just gives you that warm and fuzzy feeling when you go to bed at night. And you're like, I'm not a doctor. I get to have fun working with them and developing interesting algorithms.
I could definitely relate being in this industry. It's like you feel like at least you're playing a small part. You're a small contribution in the overall betterment of humanity, so that's great. Anything else you want to promote?
Yeah, I'll mention two things really quick. One, I'm working on my first book, which is a whole nother conversation, but it's called Productive Harmony. You can follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Productive Harmony. It's about being productive and thinking of using energy first, not time, to be productive and not burn out. Very 21st century approach to it. And the final thing I'll just say is my favorite quote these last few months, and Bill Gates said it, about our ability to imagine what is possible And if we look 2 years into the future, we probably tend to overestimate what is possible. But in 10 years, we vastly underestimate what is possible. So the world is changing. Not sure if it's for good or bad, but the world is changing.
I think in your last post, what did you mention? Experiment, adapt, and be better. That's how you ended your last post. And
yes.
That's a fitting way to end this conversation.